spry tubers, twitchers, and pod people out there. Welcome to the Could You Do It Better podcast, where filmmaker, gamer extraordinaire, and the behind-the-scenes awesomeness known as Sesh, and the writing and directing sensation known as Maria discuss popular television shows and movies and answer the always controversial question of, could you do it better? Today, we will be discussing the Season 2 premiere of Ryan Condal's House of the Dragon television series based upon George R.R. Martin's novel, Fire and Blood. And as for me, I'm Jonathan the Intern, and unlike our two experts, have no industry experience whatsoever. In other words, I'm much like a ratcatcher. I wade through raw sewage attempting to slay, I have less intelligence than a kindergartner, and even though our target audience is adults, my responses only gets the toddlers' heads to roll. Woo! And now to Sesh and Maria.
Woo! Woohoo! We're here.
We are back. How about that? Did not think that was going to happen, but we are. They extended the lights one more year. Oh, man.
Very true.
Yes. So for everybody here, welcome back. And something you should know before we get started, this is Season 2, Episode 1 of the House of the Dragon TV series recap that will contain spoilers throughout. So if you haven't watched this episode and don't want to hear spoilers before you do, please feel free to put us on mute as you watch the episode, then rewatch our show afterwards, because that's how you double those view counts. And now, on to the recap as mandated by our legal department. They're still here. We start with a new intro where they embroider the only way I know how, steeped in blood. After a lovely raven's eye flight through the forest, we swing by Winterfell to pick up narration from Torrhen Stark about the honor of being chosen by a lottery to be part of the Night's Watch to defend against death. Ah, the good old days, before the honor went to convicts and could you do it better interns. Jace asks Torrhen to remember the North's oath to the crown and supply his army. Torrhen counters by saying nobody loves oaths more than geriatric men. Feel free to stop by the local nursing homes to pick up a few thousand of them on your way out. Over to Rhaenyra's camp, where Rhaenys and Daemon have a moment together. Daemon wants Rhaenys to fly with him to King's Landing and kill some Hightower dragons, while Rhaenyra grieves. Rhaenys is like, man, trying to tell me what to do like you're king or something? You ain't even been made assistant manager at Taco Bell yet. I'm going to sleep. Cut to a glowering Rhaenyra staring at Storm's End. Oh, and we're done with that scene, I guess. Over to Corlys, and hoo boy, based on his mobility and looks, he's making Crypt Keeper Viserys look spry. Safe to say, the war does not appear to be going well. On to King's Landing, where Alicent has moved on from riding Rhaenyra and her kids in Season 1 to riding Criston Cole's face and having small talk about the weather. We follow her to the small council meeting, where we get to see a calmer, happier, and chill dad, Aegon, filled with pony rides and unending love for his son. Can't say I saw that coming. We learn that the war is at a stalemate as both sides gather forces. Aegon wants to go to Harrenhal to get the Tullys to bend the knee, and Alicent is concerned over whether Rhaenyra got her edible arrangements bouquet apologizing for her son getting eaten. Alicent then meets with Larys, who informs her the staff interviews have been completed, and he's personally terminated all of the poor performers this quarter. She reacts to this by taking a bath for no apparent reason, other than it mirrors Lady Macbeth trying to get out that damn spot. Back to Rhaenyra, finding the remains of Luke's dragon washed ashore. Sad times. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Aegon continues his run of most well-adjusted king in Westerosi history by telling his concerned subjects that the next round of sheep, iron, and salt are on him in a kind and genteel manner, much to their delight. Just goes to show that all you have to do to rehabilitate an insane serial rapist who masterminded a child death fighting ring is to crown them king and let them have babies with their sister. Otto is displeased by Aegon's joy in helping the community, and Larys uses this as an opportunity to make a move against him by asking the king to lop off his daddy's hand. Because Of course. Alicent has her first mature discussion of the series with her dad, of all people, asking him rationally to stop undermining her in front of her children, or else she'll lose her influence over them. That way she can steer the path to victory by having Rhaenyra bend the knee to her, give up all claim to the throne, and then they can all live happily ever after. Yep. Sure, that'll happen just any day now. Over to Dragonstone, where Mysaria was caught sailing with goats. I'd give you some context, but there isn't any. Plus, seething Rhaenyra just arrived and simplifies her wartime strategy in 4 simple words. I want Aemon Targaryen. Before storming off to have a truly heartfelt scene between her and Jace, who has just returned from the Wall. Intercuts of Luke's funeral and Alicent lighting a candle for him. Yeah, that'll make everything better. Daemon sneaks off in the middle of the night to King's Landing, where he pays the local ratcatcher and a guard to sneak into the Red Keep and kill Aemond. Yep, sure, nothing will go wrong with this harebrained murder-for-hire plot. But where's Aemond? Well, he's confiding in his apparent newfound father figure, Sir Criston Cole, that he hates his angry mom's weakness and her dad. The hand's authority over Aegon. And Aegon clearly doesn't need that because he's just getting drunk on his throne with his bros, talking about how the man is always trying to keep him down, man. Instead of, letting him, chill out, bruh. Rents, man. You know what I'm saying? The ratcatcher and the guard stumble through the castle and upon Queen Helena, and hold her at knife point, asking her to give up the king's heir. Unfortunately, though, because Season 1 never introduced the characters all that well, she thought they meant King Aegon's heir Jaehaerys instead of King Viserys' heir Aemond, and the ratcatcher and guard unfortunately took intelligence as their dump stat, so they cut off the poor 3-year-old kid's head with a butter knife because Game of Thrones. Episode ends with Helena running away to find the nearest Kingsguard for help, only to find Alicent already on top of him. This time grinding away on a different organ of Sir Criston's. This episode is brought to you by In Name Alone Printing. We've all been there. A company retreat, your birthday party, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where you just don't know anybody. And even worse, you don't know if anyone knows you. Well, here at In Name Alone Printing, we've got your back or front with custom embroidered name tags perfect for every occasion. It's as easy as picking a color, pattern, and interest, and in 3 to 5 days, nobody will ever forget your name again or accidentally slaughter you due to mistaken identity. That's In Name Alone Printing, where you're only as important as your name. Back to you, Sesh and Maria. Sorry, In Name Alone Printing for the little flub there, but I think our audience knows that you're the place to go to get embroidered names.
Our fake sponsors are going to be so upset.
Wow, thank you for that intro, and I'm definitely going to get a name tag because that sounds fantastic.
It does.
So, okay, let's just jump right in. Our first question of the night is, the creators originally planned to start the series with this season instead of the prequel we watched last year. Do you think the whole series should have started with this episode? I guess I'll begin. I feel like the way they approached this episode definitely needed an understanding of who we're watching from a previous season. However, I think if they didn't have the prequel, this episode would have been executed differently and could have easily been done to show the basic issues going on. I personally don't think the prequel was necessary for the main reason that the most fascinating aspect of it for me was King Viserys. And the time spent on his character and life would have been worth it if now we see him in action this season. However, he has passed and his heirs are left to fight. So that it wasn't a very complicated setup for what they're fighting about. So it wouldn't have needed a whole prequel for us to understand their disdain for each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not this episode, to start with, but certainly one of the final episodes from last season. In post, you can hear Ryan Condal talking about how the first half of season 1 was prologue, and the second half focused on the first acts of war. And again, for those who don't know, we found out late last season that the prologue part of season 1 was actually never part of the director's or writer's vision. It was something added fairly late into the creative process by HBO. So that does help explain why season 1 felt so messy, had so many time skips, seemingly random scenes, and undeveloped arcs. I think if you start the series with Viserys already nearing the tail end of his life, building up the rivalries between Rhaenyra and Alicent, along with intrigue due to the muddying of the royal line of succession, followed by the act of war after his death. So maybe, I don't know, start 4 episodes before this one, so you have time to build up to Luke's death. Then this would maybe be episode 5. But overall, I agree that the prologue seemed wildly unnecessary and added no real value to the series whatsoever.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement. Like, this episode would almost be there, but it's close, but not quite. Like maybe 3 or 4 episodes of the last few episodes of last season. Like there are only a few plot points to be current and relevant that are needed to experience this episode with better understanding rather than just diving in. It's only a few of those. I felt we only needed a couple of episodes from that last season to get that good enough understanding of what's going on in this episode and who everyone is character-wise. So after watching this premiere, it does make me think that, yeah, those plot points were going to be in this originally before they had to do the prequels and scramble to make up some stuff previously of what happened, like the prologue stuff. So to some stuff, yes, we would be totally fine without watching the last season. Like, for example, I love the introduction of the wall in the north. I'm going to bring that up a lot because I'm trying to remember when it was and the exact introduction in the original series. And I feel like this was almost a stronger introduction to it. I felt like it was more memorable. Like, I love the line, like, the dragons wouldn't cross. And that Stark voiceover. I mean, that would have been great originally in season 1, and just not having half of season 1 would have been better, I think. You almost would like the show less watching more of it, though.
I think we're all kind of on the same page with that one. So our next question is, this episode has planted a lot of seeds of potential betrayals. Which seed do you see sprouting as the most powerful or troublesome in future episodes? Jonathan?
Oh, yes, I will go. So Laris is certainly making a play on the hand. I think the technical term for that is a foot job.
No. Our rating just got higher.
That said, I'm still unsure how that might eventually play out, as Otto certainly has had some staying power, and it might wind up that Laris ends up just playing himself. So the two I'm more interested in right now would be as how Aemond reacts when he finds out that both his nephew was killed while Sir Criston was sheathing his sword in his mom instead of using it to protect the royal family. You know, he's a loose cannon and can be highly unpredictable. So I think that there's a strong chance he might do something way outside the realms of what's necessary. On the other side, though, I'm going to guess Mysaria is going to be a big player because she was in this episode. Otherwise, she wouldn't be. So I would not be surprised at all if she still works for the hand and that she's going to sow seeds of destruction or discontent in Rhaenyra's camp. As Daemon, I mean, he'll certainly have a fall from grace from this, and she'll be right there waiting for him.
Yeah, you know, they did seem to have some chemistry there. which was like,
Yeah, as
they had their time.
yeah, I was going to say, as we knew from the prologue from like 37 years ago, that they were a hot item before that 74th time skip, I think.
Yeah. I see Laris as being the most dangerous, in my opinion. Like the foot, he could stomp.
The foot.
What were you saying? In the long term, yeah, because he's installing King's Landing with his own allies and keeping a thumb on everybody's secrets. While Aemon is a good fighter, but I think he thinks he's smarter than everyone, which will most likely be his downfall. I'm curious to see what happens when Aegon finds out his son is murdered. Will he mature overnight to be an actual like, can he really be like, oh, I need to really like step up this and navigate, or is he just gonna burn everything to the ground with blind rage?
I think he's gonna take his other namesake that he was talking about, like Dragon Cock.
What do you think, Sesh?
Yeah, he's gonna go ballistic too. But that's not a betrayal. That's revenge. It's a little different. I think that maybe Elsie and her father, we did get to see them have a conversation this time, but I suspect that there's going to be a time where she actually has to choose between her children and her father. Like there's something that he does that she just totally disagrees with, or something down the line. But that's my wild theory. It's out there. Laris for sure. He's going to be a problem and cause that chaos that our original Slimeball Littlefinger talked about. Like that's coming for sure as well. But I think we're going to see a lot of other repercussions of betrayal from Daemon essentially killing the heir to the throne. And I suspect that's going to change a lot of people's loyalty to him and his characters in his circles. In what ways, with who exactly, I'm not positive, but oh boy, this was a bad mess up on his part. And I think people are really going to see that as like a incompetence and cowardice, which I don't think people saw him like that before. So we'll see who likes him after this.
Hard to believe based off of season 1, but yes.
I like your point about I'm hoping that there is more about Alicent growing and kind of separating from her dad more, or understanding how much she's being used.
Yeah,
it'd be nice. It'd be nice to see.
It would be.
All right. Yeah, we'll see. Our next question is, does this episode feel more event or character driven? Which would be better for the show?
I guess I'll take this one. Sure. I think the showrunners want to pretend it's character driven, but what exactly are the characters even driving is the question. They seem to behave almost randomly episode to episode just to drive along some plot point with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, just for the purpose of making an event happen that the episode is clearly structured around. Where's the decision making, the intrigue that normally is readily apparent in character driven shows? It's almost like the writers replaced the juicy dialogue and interactions that made Game of Thrones so successful with characters' emotional range auditions. Okay, give me angry crying for 15 seconds. Now, give me sad and worried while staring at an ocean. Give me dead inside while having sex for 30 seconds. Perfect. Perfect. That's a wrap. We can cut it. Send it, book it.
Oh, man. Okay. All right, Sesh, your turn. What do you think?
I felt it was character adjacent, like maybe not driven, but it was their emotions. It wasn't necessarily like driving a lot of the scenes, but they were in the scenes. We were establishing where the characters are, like emotionally mostly, and everyone is just reacting to the events of the last season. So their character, as in who they are as people, doesn't feel like a driving factor, other than the finale of the episode with Damon doing his antics, which, yeah, sort of out of character. Quickly doing them, yes, but I don't know, the methods not quite in his character. I mean, it wasn't complicated or complex emotions. Like, both the sides are still feuding. The fire was already burning, so the extra fuel didn't really push like any big plot driven stuff. It's so hard. Like, it is like a character or event question for this show, like which would be better, but like, dang, like the first show had both for so long. Like, we really had so many instantly likable characters, like just straight from episode 1, and they had so many of their own individual goals, whereas this really, everyone just feels like now it's just everyone's focused on their person getting the throne, either this one person or that one person. There's not a lot of subplots going on, I feel like. So it's kind of this little mesh where it's not strongly driven by either character or event so far. Hopefully this season has a lot more up its sleeve than we've seen.
Yeah, I would agree with both of your takes on that. It's kind of sad. I feel like none of the characters are driving the story. Rather, the events are pushing their reactions. I also wasn't surprised or intrigued by any of the characters' reactions, which made it feel more like we are just plotting through important steps and events to get through the story, rather than watching complex characters push us into unexpected situations and events, which, I mean, Game of Thrones had I felt like they had that all the time. Like, oh my gosh, why would they push that child out of the window? Like, why were they doing this? Why were they, there's just so many questions, and you can see the duality of their characters, and you're interested. Where is this going? With an overall, like you said, overall big events playing under it, and how are they going to interact, instead of, oh, we're all just trying to get a throne that nobody seems to actually want to be king of. Like, it seems like not exciting to anybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but you're absolutely right. Like, the stakes for House of the Dragon versus Game of Thrones, like, they're sort of like there aren't any.
Yeah, it's like, who wants to run Dad's business? I don't know. Okay, question number 4. Do you think the characters behave true to form based off what we have seen so far from them in the past season? Sesh, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. I mean, mostly there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do anything different, but I mean, for me, what stood out as very different was like our king being kind to farmers. That felt out of place for him. Even within this episode, we saw more of like a Joffrey type attitude, from like the intimidation to the immaturity during the War Room Council to like the heathenist side in the evening, getting drunk with friends. Of course, he did have friends, even if they're fake friends. Joffrey didn't even have that. But still, like, that kindness, like, we haven't seen that. Like, I don't remember seeing that at all from him. And, like, that could be okay starting now if we actually see him struggling to be a kind king, and if that's something we continue to do, that becomes something. But I don't think we're gonna see that. I think this is gonna be a one-off. His ignorance of how to prepare for a war was represented really well in that war room, and I think this is just gonna be a random act of kindness, even though it's, we didn't need to see that he doesn't understand war. We already saw that, and he wasn't taking it seriously. So that stood out pretty big for me. Not really anyone else stood out. I felt like they were all pretty true to form. The things people said, how they acted, what they did. I'm still kind of debating though with Damon, like him trying to get help in a sneaky way. I'm not so sure about, but him going off on his own and like, I got this way seems very him. It was just going about it like the wrong way and making things worse is even more of a character alignment for him though, at least. But Like, it still feels kind of off to see him just hiring people to do his dirty work instead of actually doing I got this thing himself. Him going off on his own, yeah, but then him not doing it on his own. So I'm a little torn on that. But I don't really feel like there were any surprises this episode other than just how bad the goons were.
They were probably the most consistent character, though. They probably acted based off of how they really would have.
I would say them and Jace have been the most consistent characters in this entire series. Yes.
Give it an episode.
I could see, people, they don't have any experience and they're getting flustered. I can't believe I'm in the King's Land. Oh my gosh, I'll just kill anybody. I don't know. But
that's what you would have done there. Right.
I gotta get out of here. Time is running, Ben.
I was thinking the one guy was a knight, though.
He was one of the Kingsguard. I thought
Kingsguard, wasn't he someone though?
I thought he was just like some security guard. But you're right. You're probably right.
A security guard should have better. He should have been better as a security guard, like just some random knight, not like a Kingsguard knight. That's what I thought.
He felt like the security guard you see at the mall, though. I mean,
I'm gonna watch that guy with two eyes now from now on.
Yeah, retired cop with some rage issues.
Some.
There's a sliding scale, Sesh. Sliding scale.
He's one end.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, while I wasn't surprised by anyone's behavior, I also wasn't seeing consistent behavior from the previous season. It seemed like Alicent had grown into a much more bitter, unstable person in the previous season. Although maybe now that she has Sir Criston in bed, it's calmed her down. I don't know. But Sir Criston, by the way, looks super miserable. Aegon seems like he was tending toward being nicer than previous season, which was out of character, like you guys were saying. Although that wasn't even consistent. He's like, I'm a jerk, now I'm nice, like you guys were saying. I think even Daemon wasn't consistent. Last season, he didn't do anything Rhaenyra wanted. And in my mind, would have done something far more drastic than go on a secret mission to try and kill Aemond, as she requested. I feel like he would have done, like, burn the city down or something else, What is your take?
My take is I think you both are being way too nice because really the only way most of the characters made any sense to me this episode is if they randomly chose character maps out of a hat.
Oh.
I mean, you have Aegon, who in season 1 was a beyond psychotic serial rapist, drug addict with daddy and self-control issues, who would make his bastard sons fight to the death in underground child fighting rings.
I forgot that was him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sister, have your goats back.
Yeah. Turned happily married, well-adjusted, loving father and benevolent king. But that's not all. You have Alicent, who in season 1 was an immature, fully underdeveloped, chaste character with no mind of her own whatsoever, instead doing whatever the closest man around tells her to do, turning into someone who is now a political schemer who can make reasoned arguments and orders her Kingsguard to have sex with her? Then you have Sir Criston Cole, who has gone from emo boy with severe anger issues to dead inside father figure emotionless sex slave. You have Daemon, who, well, never mind. I mean, Daemon has been written differently every single episode, so I don't even know what his actual normal form is. And this all happened in, let's check the calendar, 3 days? Did I get that right? It's been like 3 days, and all the characters are fundamentally different. There's just no episode-to-episode character consistency in this show. I'm asking you, is this a too many writers with not enough communication or like a handoff issue? Because I just don't get it. There's no way that you can write characters just this differently episode to episode, and it seems to happen every single episode in this show.
It's a good question.
I wonder wonder too, yeah. But it feels like there's always someone that's off. I feel like there are some characters that are definitely more consistent than others, but there's always like someone that's a little off. Like who we should keep an eye out. Like who's the oddball out this episode?
Oh, for me it was everyone. I mean, Damon's usually the one who every episode you're like, what is this that I'm watching?
But I feel like that's the norm now. So.
Maybe it's because they're thinking of like the bigger picture like way too much. Like, we got to make sure all these things happen before. No, it did to me. Going back to Aegon and suddenly caring, like you noticed he was having his own sons fight to the death, and now he suddenly loves one of them, just so that we can see when he gets killed his having rage. And that's like, what? Mm-hmm. You didn't even care about your kids.
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, that's why they obviously did it. They changed his character to show, his son died, and now he's going to go off the rails because it's further like adding to it. But there's no reason to do that. Like, you already know his character. Like, you don't have to make him all nice and happy. Like, maybe you can show him a little happy while king in like a Joffrey happy sort of way.
Maybe they want us to care about him, like, he lost his son that he cared about. So
yeah, it's like they wrote him the wrong way last season. Again, another reason to skip more of those episodes than to watch more of those episodes. Because he was so nice to the farmer, even though it's kind of dumb. But and so we'll feel bad for him. Oh wait, he did have the child fighting ring of his own children.
Yeah.
Very
good. Yeah, it definitely skip a lot of the episodes in season 1. That'll help. That will help the show be better.
All right. Our next question is: if you were Daemon, could you have done a better job of killing Aemon Targaryen?
Yeah, that was some high level incompetence from his goons. The question is, would I have said or should have said the obvious, hey, don't go killing other members of the royal family, especially the defenseless children? That's why there's like this trained knight or security guy or whoever he is on this team, to take out the adult-sized one that can fight back. So, like, now do I have better goons than these two to do my bidding? Yes, absolutely. You can't just have any goons like Daemon does. Throw gold at people that's not going to make them be competent. That was such a blunder. This played out to be such a great example. If you want the job done right, do it yourself.
Maybe the man, in his defense, maybe he has really tough toddlers at home. And he's like, I can't fight this guy.
I mean, he is only supposed to be like 14 or something, even though he's like a foot taller than everyone else.
You do make a good point.
I forget how old he is supposed to be, but they do say he literally says, I hear he's formidable. Take this big guy with you to fight him. And they chose the babies instead. Like, oh my gosh. Like, sleeping babies, not even fighting toddlers like you're describing.
Well, you gotta catch them in their sleep, or else you're not.
Exactly.
I think for me, I mean, anyone could have done a better job. He shouldn't have trusted hired thugs, like you said. He didn't even know. He also shouldn't have approached killing Aemon with clearly less capable fighters. Why wouldn't he have just used his white worm to simply have Aemon poisoned? No risk of fighting and losing. I thought that was the whole reason they brought White Worm back into this episode, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Wait. You're telling me this wasn't a perfect plan? No. I mean, who could possibly foresee a murder for hire plot featuring two complete dimwits who don't even really know who they're going to murder going sideways? Seriously, though, Daemon, to his credit, was able to figure out a way to get all the way up to the doorstep of the Red Keep. I mean, based on his fighting in the Stepstones, he could have straight up Naruto run through the castle, killing every single person, crowning himself king, no problem. The show's done. I mean, hell, that ratcatcher and guard basically could have done the same as everyone was just screwing around, sometimes literally. The real thing he should have done, though, I mean, Aemon's dragon is way more important than Aemon. I don't care what anybody says. Plain and simple, you know Aemon is a complete and utter hothead who has impulse control issues. Bait him to chase some military goal, or clear an easy win, like passing on info that Rhaenyra has abandoned her command to grieve the loss of her child alone at some given location, which, wait a second, isn't that what happened? So, give him tunnel vision. Make it seem like a can't lose situation. This ends right there, and all the while he goes ahead and he's driving his dragon in, you set that up as the ambush of all ambushes. You take him down, you take his dragon down, and you deal the single most devastating blow to the High Towers. That said, that's if they actually guard anything, since they clearly don't. I mean, just walk in and just kill everybody and steal the dragons. Shove over. Like, where's the King's Guard? Where's security?
Did you forget he had his sneaking cloak on? He could have just walked in. The cloaks came back. The doing devious things cloaks came back, and he was wearing it. He could have just walked right up.
Magic invisible cloak.
Unbelievable.
I know they got hair dye here. Like, if he would just cut his hair and dye it, he would have walked right in. They would have been fine.
He took
so many ways.
A well-fortified guerrilla army, one on everybody, and then killed the crab feeder. Like, I don't get it. This was a walk in the park by comparison.
This was like his kid, it was his version of himself that he was fighting as a stupider, more impulsive child. He could have manipulated him and got him out to a place so easily.
For instance, stupider. Check it out.
Thank you, Siri or Google or.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
He's like, Damon, but stupider. I got this. Oh, but yeah, there's so many other ways he could have done it. Like, just lure him out. Like, I don't get it. It's weird because, poison would have been fine. Luring him out would have been fine, and actually doing it himself. So many different ways.
That's why I don't write this show. Go ahead.
Yes, our last question of the evening is, how does this episode compare to last season? What was done better, and what was not so much? Want to get us started?
Sure. I mean, I think this episode was easily better than most episodes last season, simply because there was a coherent storyline. There was some actual drama, and none of the extraneous gore and violence that had absolutely nothing to do with the storyline. As well, there was noticeably less exposition from what I saw, so this season had that going for it. I was also actually engrossed in those final 10 minutes of the episode. Not because it was riveting television, but because I really wanted to see how it was going to go. And that's something I really can't say happened at all, really, last season. So that was the good. The bad, I think this episode somehow made the character identification worse than last season, which is something I never thought I'd be able to say. I joked last season that nobody would be able to identify Damon's lines by reading them in any given episode last season. And this episode was more like that, except for every character. And nobody acted in character based on what was shown last season, except for, I want to say, Jace. I mean, maybe Rhaenyra at the tail end. I'm not sure. Maybe Rhaenys. As well, I think there was major confusion about when this episode actually took place in the timeline with regards to the season 1 finale. So the bulk of the characters made it seem like it occurred a couple days ago. But then there were some who made it seem like months, especially with regards to the blockade, and now how Corlys is completely worn down, and how Rhaenys is completely exhausted and worn down. You wouldn't think that would happen in 2 days. So I'm not certain everybody was on the same page with the timeline, which makes sense, as when you have like the 78 time jumps in season 1, it gets a little hard to keep track of what the timeline is for everybody.
Yeah, for me, comparing episode 1 to episode 1, I enjoyed this much more. I like the conflict and tension that was within each of the different groups, like the in-feuding and in-fighting. There were events that happen that will and have huge repercussions. The pacing I felt was really good. I feel the emotion was very well acted. Like all of it was just so much better than the first season's episode 1. Like the exploitative events of an unfortunate childbirth and the just cruelty of who's supposed to be a kind king. I was just not a fan of that episode or anyone in it that we met at that time. Like gosh, and okay, even the opening here with the music and the tapestry was better. Thank you. Yeah. Finally, a decent opening for Game of Thrones. Like I really enjoyed watching it, and I want to like look at all the details and wondering what those plots are, those little bits of the story that we're seeing. Like the opening, with the wall and the Stark voiceover, like that's just that felt like a better show premiere entirely than just a season premiere. I do feel like a lot of the characters are floundering though, like this point in the original series, it's like, oh, the Starks are taking arms. This means war. We know what's going on. I feel a little lost. Like, okay, so who's gonna do what now? Like, there's like not really like a actual, okay, we have to do this thing now. Like, it's just again like both sides kind of like, we're gonna fight one day. So
yeah, great point on that opening. That opening was outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first episode of the last season was a mess. This one definitely was better put together and more cohesive. I felt like it was a real show. Like I say, the show that I watched. Well, the other didn't have that feeling for me. However, I also wasn't really emotionally engaged in this episode. I found myself kind of checking my phone at times. The episode felt predictable. Like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. I think the positive that the first episode of last season had was intriguing characters. Even though they weren't good, it was just like, what's this king doing? Why is this the queen saying that? I had questions. This episode felt more like watching groundwork being laid for a show I will eventually enjoy seeing later, but not quite in the show yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's a really good point. See, but I think with the first episode of the first season, I was like forcing myself to pay attention to everyone just because this is their introduction. Like I didn't feel, pulled into it. I was just like, okay, I really got to pay attention this time because I saw how they hit us with all those Starks and those families and everything in that first show.
Yeah, I mean, that season 1 premiere, I think we forget about it, but like they introduced like 78 characters like in 60 minutes with everybody.
It's rough.
Like one line, and it was brutal, like absolutely brutal.
It's like family establishing shots. Like they literally like, here's a lineup, and then here's like meet like one or two that say something. It was a lot. So I was really trying to pay attention with this series because I thought they would do the same thing.
Yeah. So everybody's favorite ratings time?
Yeah, let's do ratings. I'll go. I would give this episode a 5.5 out of 10. As I thought the writing was solid with the setups that were there. The acting was very well done for the most part. Everything felt purposeful. It just wasn't as engaging for a first episode of a season as I was hoping for. I think I needed the characters to have more nuance to them than they did, to give me something to question and wonder about. Right now, the characters all seem to be what they are at face value. Nothing psychological to really figure out.
Yeah, I completely agree. It really wasn't engaging outside of those final 10 minutes for me. I think, and it's because of what you're saying, there's just been so little intrigue and tasty dialogue in this series that when combined with the inconsistent character issues, just makes everything feel much smaller than it should be. Everything is overt. It's in your face. There's no Tywin or Lady Olenna or Littlefinger or Varys that makes you question, what is really going on here? What's hidden beneath the surface? What's actually going on in this scene? Not just what we're being told. And as such, things in this series so far just seem so bland. cinematography and music were solid. So, I give this one a 6 out of 10 or just a plain C. Just a run-of-the-mill episode that gets you where it needs to, but it doesn't provide you all that much more than pretty much that. Just vanilla episode with a nice, fun 10-minute ending, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely continue to watch, even if we weren't doing this. But it really makes me wonder, like, what this episode would have been if we didn't have that prologue season. Like, if it would have been denser with those things that it's missing. So, like, the last few episodes of season 1, I look back at my ratings, and they were, like, between a 7.5 and an 8.5 for me. Now, I don't remember them being that good, and I do suspect those episodes were they had some inflated numbers because of the previous episodes in that season being some of the worst Game of Thrones episodes ever, on par with original show last season stuff. So this episode, season 2, episode 1, I felt like it just barely maybe touched the rim of like a level 7 for me. Like, it felt like it had like the same quality of where we left off. Like, I feel like it was just about as good as like those last few episodes. Like, I loved, again, the ominous vibes of the wall, but then it's wasted because even though it's like we know like it's ominous and it's the big bad, like in this series, the wall isn't going to do anything. It's not going to ultimately be the big bad that it was set up to be in the original series. So like the catch-ups with everyone is up to par and like felt good, like I didn't feel like anyone was doing anything too out of character. I like Rhaenyra's going off and just kind of needing to confirm, like there were people I think were emotionally in good places that at least that like made sense for their characters. I am excited to see how the houses all like split up and who makes some entertaining TV war moves, because I really don't know how it's gonna happen. Like, I really don't know who's gonna go for what side. Like the Knight kind of put it right, like, what are we supposed to do? We're loyal to the family, and you're all our family, and you're fighting amongst yourselves. Like, I'm not excited to see what any of the characters do, though. Like, I don't have any, like, I have no fictional TV character love for any of them. Like, there's one secret that's going around. There's like, the not queen anymore and her knight. Like, there's so much in like the original series that were secrets, and we don't know things and things to be discovered. This only has looking forward, and we know a lot of the stuff that happens in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I always like the characters are not easy to identify within the Game of Thrones universe anyway. Like, but in this one, it's hard to even identify with their motivations. Like it's so straightforward. It's just there's no tact to or subtlety to pretty much anyone. So it just makes it difficult. All right. Anything else, guys?
I think we're good. You want to carry us home?
Yes. How about that? And leaving you guys with a little bit of time a little early. Let's check just to make sure we don't have any questions. We are good to go. All right. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening and watching us until the end. We really appreciate all your support, and hopefully we brought you some intelligent conversation and laughs tonight. Maybe. And it's support that makes this worth it. So if you like this show, please like, share, subscribe, and heart, or whatever feature. And if you hated this show, please make sure to like it twice, as that'll really show us. We keep metrics of everybody who likes this twice, and it makes us know that we need to do a better job. So our next episode will be on Tuesday, June 25th, I have, at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So looking forward to seeing you guys then. And until next time, could you do it better?